Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Tapping In webinar. I hope everybody has had a fantastic long weekend if you live in WA, and if not, and you didn't have a long weekend, I hope your weekend was safe and entertaining. So, we are starting from the beginning again. We're all the way back to part one. So, today, for those who haven't been to part one before, we are looking at why it makes sense for businesses to employ people with impairment. So, let's jump straight in. 30-foot drop acknowledged the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present. Must always remember that under the tarmac and concrete this land is, was and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. 30-foot drop would also like to acknowledge the Department of Communities Disability Services for funding this and many other initiatives. Without their support, so many projects, such as Two Wise Monkeys, would never actually see the light of day, and as a community we would be so much poorer for it. So this workshop is part of the is part of the Realities and Advantages of Access and Inclusion grant awarded to 30-foot drop as part of the Information Linkages and Capacity Building grants for 2018 to 2019. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping before we dive right into today's topic. First of all, unfortunately, we don't actually have the resources to monitor all of our live streams during today's session. So, if you are on Facebook or on YouTube Live or any of the other destinations that we have set up for today, please, if you want to interact with us, head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. There you'll find another version of this live stream going on as well. We're posting it there along with a chat box. Okay, please make use of that chat box to interact with us. Okay, we live for your interaction. We really like to know that there are people out there listening. So go for it. We are also going to be going over a large amount of, there we are. We're going to be going through a very large amount of information in a short amount of time. So really encourage any participants or viewers out there, please minimise your distractions as much as possible. Now, if you can't stay and watch the entire webinar, fear not. Okay, we are actually recording it and we'll be uploading it onto the 30-foot drop YouTube channel and the 30-foot drop Vimeo channels. So if you're unable to watch the entirety of this, or if you want to go back and review any information at a later date, they are all there to be found. We're going to be referencing research during today's session. All of the sources that we discuss or mention in this, the original sources of this material is found in the 30-foot drop digital resource library. Okay, and it's not just information around the subject that we've got going today. We've got a lot of information on there. Basically anything that I find that is interesting or useful, whether that be research articles or Australian standards or checklists, and other similar bits and pieces, those are all there in our digital resource library. So I really encourage you guys to make use of it. It's free and it's an amazing resource. It helps to stop you having to trawl through the internet to find the information yourself. It's all there. Now, at the end of the webinar today, okay, I really encourage you, or even as we're going today as well, really encourage you guys. We've got a short survey. It'd be lovely if you guys could fill it out. Short survey, 6 questions, 30 seconds, that's all it takes. You'll find it on the 30-foot drop live webpage. Down the very bottom there will be buttons leading to the surveys, and this is the webinar part 1, so you'll be doing a survey on that. 6 questions, 30 seconds, helps us immensely. Okay. Also, if you enjoy what we do today, please follow us on social media, let us know. Comments, ratings, reviews, subscribes, anything to do with that really helps to build the 30-foot drop brand and get us out there to more people. Okay, so allow me to quickly introduce myself. For those that don't know me, I am Ben Aldrich. I am your wise monkey for today. I am see no evil. Now, I am see no evil because I have a very visible and obvious impairment. I am a C5 quadriplegic. Okay, so that is why my hands look odd. I can't actually open them up on their own. That's like as far open as I can get them. So you know, between that and the fact that I have a wheelchair that I use to get around, it's very obvious that I have an impairment. And that's why I'm see no evil, okay? Because by the end of today, you will see no evil about impairment with the information that you walk away with. Now, like I said, I'm Ben. I'm Managing Director here at 30 Foot Drop, and I really hope you guys enjoy yourself today. My co-presenter, Lisa, who will be doing this evening's webinar, she is hear no evil. Now, I won't ruin her story, but in a nutshell, she has an invisible impairment. And unless you actually know, she tells you about it or informs you about it, you would never even realise. Okay, and that is why she is hear no evil. Because by the end of the day, hopefully you will hear no evil about any impairments that are shared with you. Now, there's normally 3 wise monkeys though. You know, you got your see no evil, you hear no evil. Where's the speak no evil? Who's that? Well, it's going to be you guys. By the end of the day, with the information that you get here, you will leave speaking no evil about impairment. Recognising that, hey, at the end of the day, we're all human. And that in some cases, especially when it comes to people with impairment, we make amazing employees. So, how are we going to get you started on the path of the wise monkey? Now, there's a lot to learn about this subject, so this is how we're going to break it down. First up, we're actually going to examine and bust some of the common myths around employing somebody with an impairment. Then after the Mythbuster section, we're going to actually get down to brass tacks and look at the subsidies available when employing somebody with an impairment and how you, as the employer, can access them. The final subject is workplace modifications and how to access the funding for these things. So they're the 3 main subjects that we're going to have a look at: the myths, the subsidies, and the workplace modifications. Okay, all really, really useful information for an employer to know. Because the thing is as you'll find out, as an employer, you've been missing out on an amazing resource, okay? And that is employees with impairment. So after we've done those, we'll do a quick open forum session where people can ask any questions at all, and we will answer them. And so how are we going to do this? Well, 30 Foot Drop, our teaching method, okay, is that we like to educate the community through open, honest conversations. Okay, and that's what today is all about. Open, honest discussion. So feel free to ask any questions that you have, okay? And they don't have to be about what we're talking about today. They can be about anything, okay? I am happy to share any part of my story. If it is completely off topic, it doesn't matter, okay? Ask any and every. And in order to do that, I'll take a step back. Well, in order to do that, you're going to need to chat with us. Now, you'll also notice that there is very little written content on my slides. That's because you're here to interact with me, your presenter. Okay? And in order to facilitate that, in order to facilitate any questions that you have, I once again really encourage you to head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay? And use the text box in there. Okay? The link is just below my talking head there. Okay? Yeah. So that is the outline. Okay? Before we dive into the information and I start to educate you employers about how amazing people with impairment are as employees, I want to actually go over some terminology. Now, this will ensure understanding and reduce confusion, okay? So first up is the difference between disability and impairment. Now, you've already heard me talk about people with impairment today. And the reason that I'm using the term people with impairment instead of people with disability is because the word disability has actually been used wrong for a long time, okay? And I think that the best way to show that is an explanation. So here we go. We'll start off with what an impairment is, okay? An impairment is an injury, illness, or congenital condition that causes or is likely to cause a loss or difference of physiological or psychological function. In short, an impairment is your medical diagnosis. Okay? So for example, my impairment from a personal standpoint is that I'm a C5 quadriplegic with post-traumatic stress in remission. Okay? So your impairment is how you are different from what is seen as the norm when it comes to society. Okay? So how I differ is that I'm a C5 quadriplegic. That is my difference to the rest of society. Now, A disability, on the other hand, is actually completely different. A disability is the loss or limitation of opportunities. Okay, the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in society on equal level with others due to social and or environmental barriers. Okay. Now, when I say environmental barriers, I'm not just talking about the natural world around us. Okay, environmental barriers can be anything in the physical world around us, whether that is human-made or not. Okay, so a disability, as the word implies, when you actually stop and think about the word disability, okay, let's break it down. Disable, okay, something that makes you unable to do something. Okay, so a disability is not actually the person. It is the barrier that stops the person from being able to do that. So for example, steps in the front of your shop disable me from being able to get into your store to participate in spending money on your goods and services. Hopefully that's made sense. If not, please, like I said, head over to the 30 Foot Drop live page and chuck your questions in there. Now, the next and final bit of terminology that we're going to go through is the difference between access and inclusion. Now, a lot of businesses and LGAs up until recently thought of access and inclusion as one whole word, okay? But it's not. It's actually two separate words that add together to make something absolutely amazing. So, the first word is access. Access refers to the removal or reduction of barriers, both physical and attitudinal. Now, these are those barriers that I mentioned just before when I was talking about disability, okay? So the removal or reduction of barriers to participation in the activities and functions of a community, okay? Now, at its core, at its very most basic, access focuses on the physical world around us, okay? What is there around you? Now, as a result of this, it is very, very easy to assess with a checklist, okay? It focuses so much on the physical. But access is only one part of the equation. The other one is inclusion, okay? Now, where access is looking a lot at physical, inclusion is looking a lot at psychological, okay? So inclusion is the process whereby every person, okay, I'm talking irrespective of age, disability, gender, religion, sexual preference or nationality, okay, so every person who wishes to can participate fully in all aspects of an activity or service, okay? So inclusion, to me, for example, is knowing that my opinion is going to be listened to, that I am going to be included in the activities, okay? Because you can have access without inclusion, okay? You can rock up to a place and be completely ignored, okay? So that is access without inclusion. But if you rock up to the place and you are able to participate fully in all parts of the activity, that is what inclusion is. So hopefully that's made sense and cleared up some bits and pieces and will help you understand why I use certain words in the way that I do. And once again, if you have any questions about anything, head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live, okay, and ask your questions there. But for now, let's get on with the good stuff. So let's have a look at the myths and realities that exist when employing people with impairment. Now, these myths, okay, which are these ones here, they're not just some random statements that I've plucked out of my rear end, okay? These are actually, what's the best way to put it? There's 7 reoccurring reasons for not employing with impairment, okay? And these reasons have occurred in multiple studies and research papers around the world, okay? I have a small list of them underneath there. I've listed 5, okay? These are the 5 main ones that these appear in, but they appear in so many more as well, okay? So let's have a look at these 7 myths, and we'll start off with the first one. Myth number 1, people with impairment need expensive modifications modifications in order to be a productive employee. Okay, this is not true. Impairments are like people. Every single one is unique, and not every impairment or everyone's impairment will require modifications. Okay, my advice is to always ask any potential employees to find out. Okay, be open and honest, and they will do the same back. Okay, now, when it does come to modifications, I will readily admit, okay, that being a quadriplegic, getting adaptations for impairments, it is expensive. It really is, okay? I'm sitting in $20,000 worth of wheelchair. I've got $50,000 worth of modifications done to my car so that I can drive it. Now, the thing is that I already own these things. I needed these things before I even started looking for work. There's no point in looking for work if I can't get out of bed because I haven't got a wheelchair. There's no point in looking for work if I can't actually reliably travel to and from work each day. So I already have these things. The employer doesn't need to pay for them. And even the smaller things. I have an item called, sorry, one moment, I forgot to grab it next to my desk. I will grab it now. I have got this beautiful thing called a quad tool. Okay, sorry, there we are. Okay, it's called a quad tool. Okay, it is a reacher grabber designed for quadriplegics. Now, it is amazing, this thing. Okay, I can use to pick up paper, which when you can't move your hands properly is an absolute boon, and so many other things. Now, once again, I already had this when I first was looking for a job all those years ago. And as a result, the employer didn't have to get it for me. I already had it because I needed it for at home. I needed to pick up small things off the ground. Hell, at one point I was using it to pick up my infant child off of the ground. Okay? So that's the thing. If modifications are required, there's a good chance that they already have it. Okay? Now, if an employee with an impairment does need a modification to your workplace, there are often easy and inexpensive alternatives, okay? There's a very good chance that the person with impairment that you're looking at employing has actually already encountered this barrier before and has probably overcome it as well, and so can actually guide you in what modifications need to be done, okay? This will reduce costs and will make it really easy, and will also create a massive buy-in from the employee. Now, if expensive modification, and if you're unsure, ask. Okay, that is always the key. Now, if expensive modifications are required, okay, there is funding available through a place called Job Access. We will cover that a little bit later today when we look at workplace modification. But all in all, okay, this myth, people with impairment do not require, most people with impairment do not require expensive modifications in order to be a productive employee. Okay? And if they are, then it's probably not going to be as bad as you think. Myth 2. Okay, people with impairment are frequently absent from work. Well, look, this couldn't actually be further from the truth. According to the Disability Investment Group, in a study called The Way Forward, a new disability framework for Australia, that was released in 2009, 86% of employees with an impairment have the same or superior attendance than other workers. Okay, so here's your bell curve for employees and how long they, how often they're actually there at work. And here is the bell curve for people with impairments. Okay, their average is much higher. Okay, so straight up, people with impairment, they're going to be present at your work more often. Okay, on top of that, to add to that, okay, studies also show, and in this case it is gaining competitive advantage with disability inclusion initiatives. Okay, written by Mr. Klargiorov, in 2014, found that people with impairment have a reduced turnover rate, okay? Meaning that they will stay employed in your business for longer. Okay, now, staff turnover, onboarding costs are killers for business. The less you have to pay of them, the better. Okay, so with a reduced turnover rate, they're going to be hanging around for longer. Now, why is all this? Okay, now it's theorised that this happens and this occurs because people with impairment are grateful for the opportunity to work. Okay, now that may sound really condescending, but it's true. If you look at the stats, okay, the stats show that the unemployment rate for people with impairment is double that the rest of society. Okay, it is double the rest of society. Twice as many people with impairment cannot find work. Okay, and also on average, it would take twice as many job applications before landing a job. Okay, one friend of mine, she applied for 183 positions before actually landing a job. Now, she wasn't applying to be a rocket scientist or a neurosurgeon. Okay, these were entry-level jobs that she was applying for, well within her ability and her qualifications. Yet it still took 186 applications. Okay. Now, due to the difficulty of getting the employment because of these factors, we view it as a privilege, not a right, and we go the extra mile to retain it. So, in conclusion, people with impairment, okay, they have the same or superior attendance rate, a reduced turnover rate, and they're very loyal. Okay. Myth number 3. People with impairment are only suited to unskilled work. Now, this one drives me nuts. It is massively untrue. Okay. People with impairment are like anybody else. Okay. We have such a huge range of talents, skills, and abilities. Okay. And this is backed up by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and they reported that in 2012, okay, so they did a survey of working age people with impairment who are employed. Okay, they found that 19.9% of people were working as professionals, just over 14% as clerical administrative workers, 15% as working as techies and trades, okay, 11, well, almost 12% running their own business, and about a third of them working from home. Okay, massive range of talents and abilities. Okay, if you see somebody has a disability, don't just automatically assume that they can't do whatever role it is you're looking for. Okay, and when you think about it, with how hard it is to get for a job, we're not going to pull the piss by applying for something we can't get. So in conclusion, yep, people with impairment will surprise you. Myth 4. Now, this one makes me laugh a lot. Okay, my workers' compensation premiums and safety incidence rates will go up. Not true. Okay, employing somebody with an impairment does not affect your insurance premiums. Insurance underwriters look at incidence history and workers' compensation rates when they're trying to decide your insurance rate. They don't look at the number of people with impairment employed. Okay. Further to that, on top of that, okay, studies have shown that when matched, studies have shown that employees with impairment are up to 6 times less likely to have a work health and safety incident. Okay. Which is amazing. So these reduced rates will actually lower your premiums, okay, because that's one of the indicators that the insurance company is looking for. Okay, up to 6 times less likely to have an incident. Okay, and on top of that, they're also less likely to lodge a workers' compensation claim. Now, why is this? Okay, once again, it is the gratefulness of the opportunity. Basically they're theorising that this can be attributed to the difficulty many people with impairment have in finding employment. When it's so hard to find employment, you're not going to risk your job by flaunting the rules and cutting corners. Okay, you're going to do the right thing, because if you don't, it's going to be another 183 job applications. So in conclusion, really, really, really not true. Your workers' compensation premiums will actually go down. Okay, and your safety incidences will go down, not up. Myth 5, people with impairment are less productive employees. So not true. Once again, studies have shown that when matched to a position that suits their ability, employees with impairment are as productive as their counterparts. Now, here's the key. When matched to a position that suits their ability. Now, as somebody with an impairment and somebody who's worked for Disability Employment Services, that we'll cover in the next webinar tomorrow, you are not going to apply for a job you can't do. Okay, I'm a quadriplegic. I am not going to apply to become a Ricky's labourer. I know that that is beyond me. I'm instead going to apply for positions that are going to give me the best chance to prove my ability. Now, there are some cases, okay, that people have impairments that can significantly reduce your productivity. If this is the case, okay, you can actually consider accessing the supported wage system. Now, with this system, eligible people with impairment can access a reliable process of productivity-based wage assessment. Basically is fair pay for fair work. Now, it'll be covered a bit later in today's session when we're looking at subsidies. So, in conclusion, myth 5, not true, okay? Match us to the right jobs and we're pretty damn good. Myth number 6, workers with impairment will not fit into my workplace. Not true, okay? Once again, the studies, okay? And also if you think about it yourself, okay? In most cases, co-worker acceptance, or when a new employee starts next year, okay, your acceptance of them comes with awareness and observing that they are competent and efficient in their jobs. Okay, this is regardless of impairment. Okay, so think about it. When somebody starts working, you're worried that if they can't do their job properly, there's going to be more work for you. But once you see that they're good at their job, that they're competent, that's all good. They fit right in. You make them a home. Okay, so that's not true. And on top of that, okay, people with impairment, we actually make up 20% of the Australian population, and there is a very, very strong likelihood that clients and co-workers have a relative or friend with impairment, okay, which actually gives you a point of relativity, or that you can relate. And lastly, okay, more studies. They've shown that employer initiatives in hiring people with impairment can have positive bottom line results, including increased staff morale and community recognition as good corporate citizens. Okay, so in conclusion, your workers, they're just like anybody else. They will fit in. They have loves, they have hates. As long as you match them in a position that they're going to be able to flourish in, it will happen in no time flat. Final myth, myth number 7. If the worker with impairment doesn't actually work out, then I can't discipline or fire them because they're special little cases. No, that is really not true. Okay, employing somebody with an impairment is the same as any other worker. Okay, you need to establish clear performance expectations from the start. Okay, now if they are unable or unwilling to do the job, you can take your further action as normal. You follow your normal company policies and procedures. Okay, there are no special laws that prevent you from disciplining or terminating an employee who is unable or unwilling to do their job. Okay, so I hope you guys have seen through those 7 myths that people with impairment, some of your preconceived ideas that you may have had are not true. And if you do have any other questions about this, or if you have any preconceived ideas that you can think of off the top of my head that you want to ask me about, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay, and chuck it in the text chat box there and I'll answer away. But for now, with myths over with, let's move on to the subsidies. Now, when employing a person with impairment, there are various opportunities to to actually gain wage subsidies off of the government. Now, wage subsidies are amazing because they actually reduce your onboarding costs, and are basically the government's way of saying, hey, it may take slightly longer to train this person, or you've taken a big leap of faith here to employ this person here. Let's make it a little bit easier for you as a business owner. Okay, so the subsidies, they all depend on the job seeker profile and the role hours. Okay, they're designed to actually offset the training and other costs, like I said, and they can be available on either a lump sum amount or they can be flexibly given out over the course of the agreement. So, there are some provisos though. Okay, these wage subsidies, they are contingent upon the award rates being paid for the position that they're employed in. Okay, there will also be a minimum number of hours that need to be worked as per agreement. Okay, so when you do the agreement with the employment service, okay, there will be a minimum number of hours that they'll be employed for. Now, this minimum number of hours is normally said as a number of hours per week over the length of the agreement. Now, if it is 8 hours per week, it doesn't have to be at least 8 hours every week. Instead, it needs to average out over the period. Okay, so if you're doing 16 hours one week and none the next, that still works. Okay, so that's the minimum hours being worked as agreed. Now, they also need to be employed with something called a disability employment service. Now, disability employment service providers are an amazing resource for any employer, but we're actually covering them in the next webinar tomorrow, so please be sure to tune in for that. Now, there are 4 basic options available to an employer when you're actually employing somebody with an impairment, and we are actually going to go through these in detail. Now, these are only a basic outline, okay, and some further criteria may apply. So, the first wage subsidy is called the wage subsidy. That's a really creative name, isn't it? Look, the amount of the wage subsidy is $1,500, okay? And the requirements for it, okay, is that the job seeker must work a minimum of 8 hours a week, as I said earlier. And now, the duration is a minimum of 13 weeks, which is about 3 months, okay? But in order to get this underway, there has to be an expectation of at least 13 weeks more work afterwards. Now, if the role has to end at 13 weeks for other reasons, so for example, there's been an unexpected downturn or something like that, then you will still actually get paid. Okay, so this is your most basic one. Very few gates to get through, and $1,500 off your onboarding costs is pretty amazing. Your second subsidy is called Wage Start. Okay, now this one's going up a little bit. This is $6,000. Okay, but because it's gone up a little bit, there are a few more requirements than the other ones. Okay, so in this case, the employee has to be under the age of 50 years old, okay, at the time of employment, and they need to be classified as a longer-term unemployed job seeker. So this is somebody who has been actively looking for a job for the last 52 weeks or a year, okay? And on top of that, they need to have a minimum of 15 hours employment per week over a 26-week duration. Okay, 26-week being 6 months. Okay, so that one's definitely going up. $6,000 is pretty good. That's $1,000 a month that you can use to subsidise the costs of bringing on a new employee who, as you saw through the myths earlier, are pretty amazing. Okay, now this is the final one of the more basic subsidies, okay, and this is called the Restart Subsidy. Now this is $10,000, okay, so this is the big mama, okay, but as I said, as they go up, you have more and more requirements. Okay, so in this case, the first requirement is that your employee has to be over the age of 50 years old at the time of employment. Okay, they need to, again, be a longer-term unemployed job seeker, so they need to have been actively searching for a job for 52 weeks or longer. and they need at least 20 hours of work per week for a minimum of 26 weeks duration. So it's still pretty amazing. Like, yeah, I still like that a lot. Okay, now, the final subsidy, and I touched on it slightly earlier, is the supported wage system. Okay, so this is the one that is for people who have an impairment that reduces their productivity. Now, in short, it revolves around the concept of fair pay for fair work. Okay, and it allows candidates who cannot perform all job requirements to receive a productivity-based wage and not actually financially disadvantage the employer. Now, what this is assessment-based. Basically, it is done by independent assessors who will come out and they know their stuff, they know what they're looking at, and they will actually have a look at what the required or normal expected productivity is on one side and what the employee is actually managing to do on the other side, and we'll work it out in a percentage-based system. So, for example, if it's determined that somebody is producing work to 70% of the required productivity, then the relevant award rate is applicable, but only at 70% per hour. Okay, and this really allows people with a superior impairment to work without disadvantaging you as the employer. So, how can employers access these subsidies? Well, if you're too impatient to wait until tomorrow when we discuss disability employment service providers, okay, you can actually jump on the internet now and look them up. If you enter into any of your whatever search engine you use, disability employment service, and then your area, you should come up with a list of the different ones there. My advice would be to get into contact with them and they will help lead you through the process. But if you want to learn more about disability employment service providers and what their roles are and what they can bring to your business, please tune in tomorrow. So that's the subsidies. On to the final subject for today. Workplace modifications. Now, workplace modifications, okay, we can't really talk about them without talking about job access. Okay, so what is job access? Job access, okay, is the national hub for workplace and employment information for people with disability, employers and service providers. Now, I did say people with disability there, but that's because this is a direct quote from their website. Okay. Job access, it's funded by the Employment Assistance Fund, which is in turn funded by the government. Okay, so this is a government service, and they offer financial assistance for workplace modifications. Now, these modifications have to assist people with a disability to gain meaningful employment. Okay, and that is the whole point of them. They're trying to get people with impairment, people like myself, into lasting, meaningful employment. So, what can these funds be used for? What sort of workplace modifications can you get done through job access? And it is so much more than just the obvious, okay? So they can be used for making adjustments to the physical workplace, okay? So, for example, replacing door handles, locks, putting in lifts, items like that. They can be used for the physical workplace, okay? But they can also be used for modifications to work vehicles. They can also be used to get special equipment for the workplace as well, along with information and communication devices for those with communication impairments. You can also use them in some cases for Auslan interpretive services for those that use Auslan Sign Language. And you can also use them to access specialist services for employees with specific learning disorders and mental health issues. Okay? And lastly, you can use it for disability awareness training for your workplace. Now, this includes deafness awareness, which I'll touch on in a little bit, along with mental health awareness and first aid training as well. These are all things that, as an employer, you can use this service to help finance. Okay, this is a real big value add, and you'll find that is a massive part of employing people with impairment. We are value adders. Okay, not only do we make great employees, okay, who are going to be there more often, who are going to stay employed with you more often, who are just as productive, who are going to reduce your work health and safety rates, reduce your compensation premiums, and going to create a good culture within your workplace. Those are all amazing reasons straight off the bat. But on top of that, we also add values in other ways, okay? And these workplace modifications is one of those ways. So that's what it can be used for. How do you apply for it? Now, most disability employment services will actually facilitate and arrange any assessments that are required. Okay? So if you're planning on going through a disability employment service provider, get them to do it. They know what they're doing, they're brilliant. But if you want to do it yourself, it is still fairly easy. So the first thing is to look up Job Access on the internet, and you'll find their application forms. Now, the forms themselves are amazing. They're really easy to follow, and they actually have help desk available if you get stuck. Really easy, really good to do. I've done it myself a few times now. So you jump on there, you fill it out, and you submit the application to the Employment Assistance Fund. Now, they will assess the application, and if they need more information, they'll let you know. If it's not something they do, they'll let you know, and you've got to go back to the drawing board. But when it is accepted, this is what happens next. Okay, if it's successful, they will actually advise you if a workplace assessment is required. Now, what I mean by workplace assessment is if you're asking for something big, like having a lift installed, they will actually have an OT or a similar specialist come out to your workplace and assess, actually have a look at, making sure that this is a required modification and not you just taking the piss. Pardon my language. So, yeah, if a workplace assessment is not required, then they'll just let you know that you can go ahead and purchase the goods and services, and then you'll get reimbursed by Job Access. Now, if the assessment is required, then Job Access will actually arrange the specialist to confirm the workplace changes, and they will do this free of charge. Okay, you will have an OT or something similar come into your workplace to assess these. Now, this is another value add, okay? Because if you're smart, you will ask them any other questions that you have whilst they're there, okay? Most of the time, they are very happy to do that. And if the assessor says yes, it's required, then once again, you go ahead and purchase the goods and services and get reimbursed by Job Access. So that's how you apply for it. Now, like all things, there is funding caps to how much you can get. Okay, so if you're thinking about looking at getting a $200,000 lift system put into your workplace, you might want to pay attention. Okay, so the first funding cap is for physical workplace adjustments, okay, and building modifications. Now, these are capped at $30,000. So they may not be able to pay for the entirety of lift, but let's face it, $30,000 towards this workplace modification is better than a kick up the rear end. And once again, it's another value add because you're going to be bringing a builder into your workplace anyway. Well, whilst they're out there quoting for the workplace modification in the first place, get them to quote for anything else that needs to be done around your business. Okay, that way you can avoid the call-out fees. Get everything done at once, and you'll save yourself money. The next cap is around Auslan. Okay, so Auslan Level 1 is capped at $6,000 per year for 12 months. Now, Auslan Level 1 interpreting is for work-related activities for employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment. Okay, and this includes remote interpreting and real-time captioning. Okay, so it allows people who use Auslan to be able to be employed with a minimum of fuss. Auslan Level 2 is uncapped. Okay, and this interpreting is to help is for job interviews and related activities such as site visits, completion of tests and information sessions for people who are deaf or have a hearing impairment. Okay, like I said, this is uncapped, so don't let the cost of interviewing and trying out a person with a hearing impairment scare you off employing them. Okay, there is funding available to help that. Now, Auslan Level 3, and this is one of my favourites, this is another value add right here. Okay, this is to help co-workers receive training, in this case the certificate to an Auslan, to communicate with employees who are deaf or have a hearing impairment and who use Auslan as their main methods of communication. Now, this is capped at $855 per 12 months, okay, but this is an amazing value add because suddenly you have employees who can communicate they can communicate in a basic way using Auslan to potential customers. suddenly you have a niche service available. Okay, not many businesses out there have Auslan available. Okay, massive value add, really, really worthwhile. And the final cap, okay, is disability awareness training. Okay, now this is capped at $1,500 per employee with an impairment per 12 months. Okay, now what this awareness training is if you employ a person with impairment, you can apply for funding to do awareness training. So awareness training is basically getting your employees and yourself as well confident with working alongside somebody with an impairment. Now, this is a service that we here at 30 Foot Drop do, and is another massive value add. Okay, because not only will it get your employees comfortable with the idea of working alongside somebody with a specific impairment, okay, it will also include a bit of generalized awareness training, which will help your employees be comfortable around anybody with an impairment, which once again makes them better employees, makes your customer service goes up, and will result in more income. Okay, so that is workplace modifications. So that's the 3 subjects that we had today. So today we have covered the 7 myths and realities of employing people with impairment, the subsidies that are available when you employ somebody with impairment, and the workplace modifications and how you can actually gain funding to help these modifications. So hopefully those 3 have made sense to you. Now, if you have any questions, I really encourage you to head over to 30footdrop.com.au/live and ask them there. If you're not hanging around to ask questions, thank you very much for being here. I really encourage you guys again to jump onto the 30 Foot Drop live page and go to the survey there. 6 questions, 30 seconds, helps us immensely. And if you've enjoyed what we've done today, please let everybody know. Follow us on social media, share it, put it everywhere, okay? Really help us get the word out, because this resource will really help businesses make more money. Now, for those of you that do have questions, like I said, head over to the live page and ask there. I'm actually going to give you guys about 5 minutes to head over there and to enter any questions that you've got. Actually, we'll make it a little bit more than that. We'll make it 8 minutes. To head over there and ask any questions that you've got, and I'll come back online and we'll answer them there. So, yeah, for those that aren't hanging around, once again, thank you. For those that are, I look forward to answering your questions. See you at 11:55. And we're back. Whoops, got my emails up there. There we go. So it would appear that we have no questions today. So thank you very much, everybody who's here. And look after yourselves, look after each other, and see you tomorrow for part 2.